Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the next episode of the Industrial Innovators Podcast. I'm Don Cooper, your host, and today I'm really excited because we've got some of our own on the show, and we're going to be talking about rope access and how it can be leveraged in specialty services. Today on the show, we've got our operations leader, Mr. Mike Brown, and our own resident Spider-Man rope access technician, leak repair technician, Brody Kelman. Guys, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having us.
So we're talking about rope access today and how we are applying it with our customers. So give me a brief description on what rope access is, and what we're doing with Innovator in terms of taking care of our customers with it. Mike.
Yeah, so from a 1,000-foot view, what it boils down to is we had, a couple of clients reaching out to us, and they had a need for getting those pesky little leaks that are up in high lines, call them, $1,500 jobs, maybe some small packings here and there. And they were building, these massive scaffolding to get to them and get these leaks sealed up. So at the end of the day, what we wanted to do was work with our end user and be able to come up with a program where we can hang our individuals that are cross-trained in, all of our services, from leak repair to bolting, composites, pipe cutting, and be able to service them without them needing to build scaffolding is essentially the 1,000-foot view.
Right. And so right now we're applying that. You mentioned leak repair. What other things are you thinking about? Or are you already applying?
Yeah, so we're already in the process of creating our own procedures for bolting from ropes, pipe cutting from ropes. We can do stop gapping from ropes, 3D scanning. So for instance, if you guys have a leak in a high line where we need to start engineering an enclosure right away, we can get Brody or whoever to come up, get the original dimensions, and then while they're building the scaffolding, we're starting, the design phase and even fabrication, so that once that scaffold is complete, we're on site and we're ready to install. So really cutting down on, lead times, install times, and at the end of the day, the big item is cost.
I never thought about that application before, Mike. So, when I was thinking about this, I was thinking about completely replacing scaffolding, and we'll talk about the cost benefits of that in a minute. But, I don't know if you guys know this about me, but my entry into industrial services 30 some years ago, I started as a scaffolder. And it was my very first thing I did. Well, scaffolding, insulation, and asbestos removal, but I was a scaffolder's helper. And, we were always building scaffolds days, weeks ahead of when the pipe fitters or, the technicians who were going on that scaffold needed it. And from a company point of view, we wanted to build them because we could start charging for the equipment right away. Obviously, there's a cost benefit conversation around eliminating the scaffold altogether, but I hadn't considered lead times and speeding up repairs. But even you've been able to do a chunk of the work ahead of the scaffold, even though you're going to need a scaffold for a bigger component. I think that's an interesting use case.
Well, yeah, and there is scenarios out there as well where some scaffolding companies will refuse to build it under certain styles or leaks of certain natures. So what we can do is we can actually come out to site, perform the stopgap, which could be a method of, row bar clamps. It could be, just as simple as a hose clamp, or even composites in some scenarios over top of these leaks. So then that safes out the area and allows them to build the scaffold, at which point we can do, the final repair, or in some scenarios, it's not even needed because we can just stop gap it and do the composite repair. So it's kind of a win-win for both people, but it gives us a advantage to be able to go and safely see the area out and allow other people access for, the NDEs, building of the scaffold, insulation removal, whatever it is.
Yeah, just making it safe so that the scaffolders can or will get up there to do the next phase. That's interesting. There's a whole bunch of different ways that it can be leveraged from from an effectiveness standpoint. Now, over to our resident Spider-Man, Brody. So you've got some insight. You've been out there doing rope access jobs. What are you seeing, hearing, reading about, learning about in terms of the cost benefit analysis that you're seeing between you working on ropes versus what your customers were traditionally doing?
So a couple things that I'm seeing now is like we're really the first company that's out there that's offering these specialized services through our rope access program, and lots of amazing feedback and just hearing things from the clients in terms of the amount of money they're saving. Would have taken them a week to build this scaffold. It would have taken a 5 to 6 guy crew to get up this 100 feet or 60 feet. And we went in there and we were able to get the ropes rigged out, get the job complete in less than 2 hours. So the past roughly 8 jobs that we so far got under our belt, they've gone extremely well, and the client's just been happy. They're actually to the point where they're talking to other business units or different areas and mentioning this work. And I think it's great for what we can offer our clients.
And, you know, do you got any insight into what any studies have gone on in terms of the overall at a high level? I mean, we've got our own use cases, and Mike spoke a little bit about some really interesting time efficiency, safety efficiency uses of even combining rope with scaffold in a different way than was traditionally done. But at a high level, what's the comparison that people are seeing in terms of cost benefit analysis?
Yeah, for sure. So I got a little bit of documentation here from the National Petroleum and Refining Association, and essentially they broke down three major jobs and did cost comparison within those 3 major jobs. And the average cost savings, what we're seeing here, is roughly around 40 to 65% cost savings using rope access methods. And the number one thing that really sticks out to me and a lot of people is there's no safety incidents that have ever occurred in these massive jobs. Like rope access is one of the safest services that you can offer by statistics. But to get right down to some of the exact cost comparisons, this is more so of removing some insulation and doing some NDE in some situations. But so conventional scaffolding based on price fixed quotes, the cost savings were roughly 65% on a job in one of the sites. And I got a couple more here. Let me just go over what they were doing exactly. So to remove the insulation around all insulation penetrations not accessible by platforms, 15 nozzles, remove 100% of the insulation from a 12-inch overhead line, and visually inspect and take ultrasonic thickness readings, clean and prepare surface using hands, tool methods, coat and primer, and top coat. With the rope access method, they gave a quote out that would have taken them 14 days to complete this work. With the scaffold, it would have taken to build around all these nozzles, remove all this insulation. Their quote came in at 32 days in total. So massive, massive cost savings there. Like as we're moving through it, we'll definitely be able to look at our cost savings that we're doing and building some case studies with what we're doing. But from what we're seeing, it's definitely a lot of money being saved for the client.
Right. So like the use of rope access has been for 20 plus years commonplace in the offshore industry, oil and gas offshore industry. And any of our listeners who come from that market know that they do this all the time. And now on the onshore market, and particularly I think in Canada and throughout, and it's been evolving in the United States, and some of the first adopters of rope access have been NDE companies. And that's why you've got case studies there that are talking about removing insulation and doing UT. But no one else is doing specialty mechanical that I've seen so far. They're certainly not pushing it and developing it in the way that we are. Now you've got a dozen jobs under your belt. I mean, this is brand new for us over the last, we've been working on the training and the procedures and the implementation and doing pilot projects with really one client. And you've got what, 6, 8, 10 jobs under your belt so far with that client?
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Around 9 jobs we've completed. Rather than taking a full day to do one job, we were actually really pushing for it. So we were getting close to 4 or 5 jobs done in one day, just really showing the client what we can do. So we're not there waiting for scaffolds. We're not there waiting time for scaffolds to get approved or whatever. We just go in, set the ropes up, go and hit the work off, and then climb down.
And, I'm going to give a plug out to our rope access partners in this. We've been developing all these procedures and doing all of our training and executing this in the field with who, Mike?
Accurate. Directly.
So Accurate has been our partner in developing this strategy. Accurate obviously is a large NDE company. They've developed this for themselves, for their own use cases, and now we're working with them to figure out how to implement rope access for all these specialized mechanical services. As you mentioned, we're doing it with leak repair, stop gaps, certain composite repairs, certain types of bolting, and certain types of field machining. And I'm assuming that we're not trying to boil the ocean with this. We're starting small and learning, and we're not going to be trying to do large scale leak repair and closure installations with this at this point.
Yeah, so that's actually kind of a funny story. So initially, when we started to think about doing the idea, we knew that we would want to start with the training wheels on for sure. So we put limitations in place, like certain products, hydrocarbons, that kind of stuff. Anything over a certain pressure and temperature, kind of depending on what the service is all guidelines that we follow. So we really wanted to make sure that as we rolled this out, we went through all of the do's and don'ts, and we've stuck to it. So the first job that one of our clients came to us to do off ropes fell outside of that, and as an organization we just kind of held strong, and we were like, unfortunately we got to try this out on a couple of other ones before we're even going to entertain something like that, which at the end of the day I think is a must when you're introducing a new service like this. We really want to make sure the safety of our guys, and we put a lot of work into it, right? So our procedures are all in place, but they're ever evolving. Like this thing, I guess what I could say is, over the next couple of months, the training wheels of this project will come off, and we'll start to entertain, outside of what our original parameters were.
Right. So, we kind of set sort of starter training wheel limits.
Absolutely.
Just want to be, obviously, the work that we do in leak repair, bolting, and machining already inherently has its own risks. It requires its own safety procedures. When we're doing it standing on our feet, what have you had to do in terms of the development and the review and approval for key safety and technical procedures to adapt it for doing it off ropes?
Yeah, that came out of several meetings internally with our safety department, and then also some that we've done with Accurate. So right off the bat, we asked them what kind of things that they would come up against that would, pose difficulty when hanging off the ropes. We took that into consideration. And then after we put, Brody and a couple more of our individuals through the course, we asked them kind of what the actual, struggles were. And what we found was you have use of your hands for sure, but you can't really multitask on a couple of items. So right now, for instance, if we're drilling high pressure leaks and we're using a high pressure packing gland, that whole entire process, it kind of takes up all of your hands, and you need to have the pump all at one time. So anything that is going to require a 2-man crew, at this time we're pausing that, and we want to get it to a place where one individual can be doing the work, and as it evolves, we can start to hang more fellas around to do the work. And if you're doing big bore flanges or big bore wraps, then you can have 2 guys there and kind of tackling the job that way.
Right. So limiting it to what 2 hands can do with 1 person, as opposed to more complex work tasks that require someone using both of their hands to hold equipment, someone else having to operate a pump and activate it. Those things are the next phase of what you're going to do, and how you've kind of limited it to 2 hands, 1 body, hanging off a rope. Those kinds of activities is where you're starting.
Yep, exactly.
Gotcha. So, let's talk about a little more of the nuance of what are you doing? What are the kinds of leak repair jobs? What are the kinds of bolting jobs and machining jobs? Just that you're doing right now, and then sort of we'll pivot into the vision.
Yeah, so I don't know, Brody. I'll take this one. I think, I'd say probably 90% of the opportunities that have come through so far are valve packets. Actually, that was right off the hop, and those are kind of the jobs that we've been executing as of late. However, just recently we've gotten bonnet repairs in, measurements like we were talking about, so we can go up, we can measure the EP, and I believe this one's a small enough one that we should be able to install it even off of ropes. It's just a small 3/4 inch EP, and we can eliminate the scaffold altogether. There's weight limitations to things that can go up there. So for instance, you're not going to be putting big bore enclosures on, but it is something that we can entertain as the training wheels come off, I would say.
Right. And you've got inside of your current procedures, you've got some ability to do certain kinds of bolting and certain kinds of machining jobs today?
Yes, we do.
Okay. And what are the limitations or the capabilities there right now?
Right now, what we put on those for like the actual machining and stuff like that is 12-inch. We just wanted to start with a number that was reasonable. We don't want to be getting machines up there much bigger than that until we have a little bit of experience underneath of our belt and come up. Like the main thing is when we come up against an issue, whether it be on a machining job or a bolting job, we want it to be handled appropriately. So we don't want it to be a crazy, big bore machining job or anything like that. We just want to work out all the kinks and make sure that this thing proves to be successful time and time again.
Brody, with the jobs you've done so far, what are clients saying? What's the kind of feedback you're getting on how it's helping them?
Well, similar to what we were chatting about earlier, like just in terms of the time it takes to build these scaffolds and how much money that they need to sink into it, it's just a huge saving. So, for example, I actually got a case study here from some of the first 4 jobs that we did. I'll quickly go over this case study. So it was in the Fort McMurray oil sands. The client faced a situation with 4 separate valve leaks in their upgrading unit. They were causing huge ice concerns, and traditional leak repair methods would have required extensive scaffolding to access area, leading to some safety concerns, which was the ice buildup that caused the biggest safety concern. Falling ice is a major issue. Scaffolding construction can be time consuming as well, and it would have posed safety risks as the workers were exposed to that area. Additionally, there were high costs involved because some of these locations were really high up, congested areas, pipe racks. They were getting estimates to around 3 to 4 days to build the scaffold with a 3 to 4 man crew. So we kind of posed a solution where we'd be utilizing our new rope access program and took this approach and offered them several advantages. The rapid deployment of our team that were mobilized quickly and eliminating the need for lengthy scaffolding construction. There was 0 downtimes for the repairs that were performed, so they were all performed on stream. Cost effectiveness was rope access eliminated the scaffolding costs. That's the biggest one, right? Enhanced safety. Our rope access technicians are highly trained and utilize rigorous safety protocols, minimizing all fall hazards and potentials. And then there was unmatched access. So the rope access allowed technicians to reach even the most intricate locations to make leak repair in a congested area possible. Innovator's rope access team arrived on site, completed all 4 leak repairs within 8 hours.
And real quick too, if I could jump in on that one, weren't you hanging off of, in one of the scenarios, they actually hung you from the crane in the building?
Yeah, they had
So it wasn't your traditional method of hanging off of, ropes anchored or whatever. He was actually hanging right off the crane himself, which is kind of neat because then they can move it around, get him to the area he needed to be at, and bang out all 4 jobs in an 8-hour shift. Right?
Yeah. And so keep in mind too, like these were causing a lot of ice, falling ice, massive red taped areas in their plants. People couldn't go around them, causing mess on assets below that as well. So with us going in there and completing those 4 jobs in a period of 8 hours, it was just they were stunned, to be honest with you. I actually got a quote from one of the clients, and Innovator's rope access saved us big on time and money by avoiding complex scaffolding in tight elevated areas. Definitely recommending it to other business units. So, in conclusion, this case study demonstrated the clear advantages of using rope access services for leak repair. Our ability to rapidly respond, zero downtime, cost effectiveness, and commitment to safety makes us that ideal partner to tackling critical maintenance challenges. And so by leveraging innovative techniques and skilled personnel, Innovator empowers clients to achieve efficient and cost-effective solutions. So a lot of that was just read from this case study here that was built. But yeah, as back to your first point, like they were extremely impressed and definitely recommending it.
Well,
so
they loved it so much actually that they've shared it along to their other colleagues in different locations. So, you know, it's starting to catch a lot of momentum around the industry. And I know that, you know, myself as the operations leader and Brody as kind of the champion rope access guy, we're really looking forward to where this thing goes. You know, we've got the most traction with it out of our Western locations right now, but we're ready for this straight across Canada. You know, Atlantic and Central kind of Canada, all of those locations are ready to deploy at any time. So we're there for any of these, you know, rope access jobs that are required.
Very cool. Brody, that case study you just talked about, was that your first rope access job?
that was my first rope access job. Yes, it was. I love being.
Well, that's a really cool story. It's a really cool story for the first time out of the gate. You get to put your new skills into action, and that's the kind of result you give a client. I mean, that's, you know, that doesn't take a whole lot of convincing. That's a pretty compelling story.
Yeah. Thanks, Don.
Yeah, that's awesome. Where are we going with this, guys?
I personally see this going, I see this going in a direction where we're going to end up doing so much of it that I think that it's going to kind of branch off into its own little entity of our company. Like, I think that, you know, it eventually down the road, we may have like a rope access division of just people that are strictly hanging off ropes doing these kinds of repairs, because it's just like, you know, as soon as people start to figure out the real savings behind it and how easy that we are to deal with to come onto site, I think that, you know, this time next year, the workload for it is going to be, you know, 10 times what we currently are up against.
So Brody's going to go from being our in-house resident Spider-Man to being the leader of the Avengers.
Exactly.
Maybe we can start calling him Captain Innovator.
That's right.
Yeah.
You mentioned other regions. I know that as you were developing this, Mike, with your team, you focused on developing all the procedures and the training and the competency and deploying the training wheel approach to deploying it into the field here in the West, and specifically with some clients in Fort McMurray. What's the plan in terms of the training and deployment that you see for other offices? Like, what's the time frame and the thought process around adding more people to that team in the West and then bringing it to our Ontario teams and our Atlantic teams?
So right now we're currently certified in both locations. We have at minimum one technician that can hang off a rope tomorrow if a job was to pop up. The majority of the folks that are qualified are out here in the West. I think that as soon as, you know, we start to market it in the right locations, it's going to start to pick up in the Central and the Atlantic region. But, to answer your question, if we got an inquiry off of this tomorrow, we can make this happen anywhere in Canada.
Yeah, I mean, Brody's been bouncing all over the country doing a range of different things. So, ropes are ropes, whether it's in New Brunswick, Newfoundland, or Alberta, right?
You guys got more air miles than a bird. Yeah.
Well, now that he's got ropes, maybe he doesn't need wings.
There you go. There you go.
Where do we go with this now? How do you deploy this from an emergency standpoint? Because what I love about this conversation is, I knew you guys were developing this and deploying it, but I was really hands off. I mean, you kind of quarterback this whole thing from procedures to training to deployment. What happens differently from a traditional job when it's an emergency job and you want to deploy rope access? Like, walk me through what's different.
So what the main key thing I would say to that is it's having a good relationship with Accurant on site. So you got to remember, Brody's not a rope access guy that can go up there and lift up other people. He's simply a level 1. So we're not, looking to get into the business of being a rope access supplier by any means. We just want our trained, competent technicians, cross-trained, competent technicians is what I should say, to be able to be suspended in the air and do the actual work. So in an emergency basis, we can respond. We're 24/7, 365. What's key is making sure that our partners at whatever location we're working at are aware that we are a 24-hour business, and just making sure that they have response time for us as well. So, they have good response time that matches ours, right? So we need those guys on site to pull these jobs off, and that relationship is kind of key in making this a successful thing in an emergency basis. As far as turning it around, like product wise, most of our stuff is housed in all of our locations. So we can have composite wrap on site within an hour from receiving a call if need be. And, that kind of goes for all of our locations across Canada. So emergency basis wise, as long as we keep a tight communication with the folks that are hanging us up from Accurant, then, we can get out there fairly quickly.
Now, I think that's an important thing to emphasize. When I talk to a few of our clients, and the language you use and what people hear, sometimes you need to make sure you clarify. I introduced the idea that we were offering rope access for our services to one client, and they said, "Oh, we've already got 3 or 4 different rope access providers."
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I don't think anyone is doing what we're doing on ropes. But what they meant was they had 2 or 3 rope access providers who were designing and setting up the ropes, not people who were doing what we do off of ropes. And so, our strategy is not to be the rope access general contractor. Our approach is to work with those on-site preferred rope access design installers, the level 3s, to do what we do, which no one else is doing. Right. I mean, I think that's a very important thing, that we're talking about rope access leak repair, rope access composite repair, rope access bolting services, rope access field machining services, not being the on-site general rope access contractor.
Yeah.
And we're doing that right now. The partnership that we've sort of developed has been with Accurant, where we're working together on these solutions, them bringing their strong capabilities and us bringing our strong capabilities to put this unique offering together with clients.
Yeah, what it's kind of looking like out there from a field perspective is it's seeming like 70% of these clients, like you were just talking about, has a staged rope access provider out there. So kind of our first job, how it kind of worked out was I went out there the day before, and we just had a meeting with them, whoever this provider was, Accurant in this situation. We had a quick meeting. They didn't really know what I was doing. I didn't fully know what they needed to do, and we kind of just collaborated together and came up with a plan. And then they ended up, from a field perspective, they ended up going. I went and kind of was just helping them out. They rigged the ropes up. I kind of let them know where I wanted the ropes, where I wanted to climb up and down. And it's kind of, once it was all set up, they're just there to have that level 3 there for you as IRATA requirements. And you pretty much go up, we climb up the ropes, we do all the work. They're just there, just in case they got to do a rescue, or just IRATA standard just to have them there.
Right.
So if this were to go on, say, if Acuren's not there, we could definitely make this work with whoever that rope access provider is on these sites.
Right. So if our facility client has a different embedded rope access contractor, we're fully capable of working with them with our procedures and qualifications, as long as we collaborate and plan the job effectively.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm curious on what you've learned what you learned from doing it compared to what you expected going in, Brody. Like, can you kind of tell me the journey of Mike? I mean, you've been one of our fastest learning, rapid, deploying leak repair guys over the last 3 years or so, and you're out there doing a ton of leak repair all over the country, and a lot of composite repair. When you started, when Mike approached you to kind of, become Spider-Man, first off, what did you think about that? What was what attracted you to it?
So the initial time I was kind of asked this question, we were actually out on a client's site, and a client pointed up into a pipe rack, and he's like, that's a really pesky leak, but that's going to be a really expensive scaffold to build. And rope access technicians were just walking by, and he actually mentioned, like, you guys should get involved in ropes. He was a little bit higher up on the chain at Suncor. So he must have, I told him, like, I'd be perfectly fine with doing that. And he must have talked to Mike at some point in time. That's when Mike came to me, and I was looking forward to the challenge. Like, always looking forward to learning something new. My theory is more challenges, more problems are actually a better thing, to be honest with you. So super nervous for the training. I started getting a little bit more active, more treadmill time, before this certification course happened. And then once we took the course, there was actually 14 people in the course. And on the final assessment day, there was only 4 of us that passed the course. The final assessment, like, it's very vigorous training, and you can really see why it's one of the safest industries out there, rope access, due to how safe it is. But other than that, then when it came to the first job, my biggest concern was, do not forget a tool. That's the only thing I kept thinking about. I cannot climb all the way up there and forget a tool. So
my thought when I first approached Brody to be the guy to kind of champion it and be the first one to go through the training was due to actually his background. So before Brody came and joined us here at Innovator, he spent most of his adult life climbing around on roofs and in harnesses, and he was building houses. So no fear of heights, which is obviously a big plus, and spending a lot of his time already kind of harnessed up and walking around on ladders and that kind of stuff. I just thought that it would kind of be the perfect thing for him to head up, and it's proven very successful.
I mean, I knew your background with, no fear of heights, but a strong respect for it, obviously, because you put yourself in those height situations every day for most of your life. Yeah. Had you ever worked on ropes, or, used ropes even recreationally, like rock climbing or rappelling or those kinds of things?
To be honest with you, no. The only rope that we ever really hooked, maybe a few odd times rock climbing back in the day, but like Mike was just saying, like, we built massive condos and buildings and huge heights, and I was dealing with pretty big crews around there. So rope safety, our harness safety, me being a supervisor and a lead hand out there on those big crews, was extremely important. So it definitely helped having that knowledge and being able to rope organization. So when you're climbing ropes, there's a lot of ropes and tool organization, right? So I noticed in that rope access course, a lot of the newer players didn't really have that natural, comfortable feel when they're up there on the ropes. But once you start climbing up there and you got tools tied off to you and all sorts of stuff, like I just remember organization being such a important part of it, right? So
Yeah.
it definitely helped out. Yeah, but not so much rock climbing or anything like that, or rappelling.
Okay, I wasn't sure. When I was a kid, I did a lot of rock climbing, a lot of rappelling, and then I went through airborne training with the Canadian Airborne Regiment. And what I found fascinating about that training is we had 6 weeks of equipment and practice before we actually started to jump out of planes. And so much of that training was about equipment on your body when you're in those situations. We had to learn how to store our weapons and our rucksacks and checking equipment, checking our partner's equipment. So much of that training was all about the safety and the safety of your gear and the organization of your gear. And what I found, in those situations is it's completely different. All the planning that you do and all the preparation and practice when you're on the ground, you think you're ready, and then you're standing on the back of a C-130 and you're looking down at the city of Edmonton and you went, oh, this wasn't what I was expecting. So, how was it the first time you were working off ropes? Because all the experience of working on buildings and going through the training, and fortunately you having the benefit of thinking about the organization of tools. But what was it like, and what was different for you that first day when you did those first 4 jobs as you described earlier?
Yeah, so I guess I'll go right through the start. So originally, I had my junior there or whatever, and oddly enough, this client actually brought out a media, like somewhat of a media team, to take a bunch of their own pictures just to kind of show other business units. So I was definitely a little bit nervous, to be 100% honest. I remember talking to my junior there, and I just kept walking through exactly like every step, what's going to happen. Like, we're going to climb up there. Here's the tools that I'm going to have. And so once I felt fully prepared, we walked through the job exactly like we would do a job not on ropes. It was time to climb, and honestly, I just hooked up to it. It was a little bit of a remembering my training from 2-3 months prior, and then I just started to climb. And once I finally got up there and felt comfortable, it just kind of came natural, to be honest with you. Like, it wasn't too much fumbling. I was focused on just getting the job done and getting out of there. So that's all.
I think one thing too that helped us out with that was prior to Brody requested, a bunch of modified not modified tooling, but smaller tooling. So for instance, like, our interpack pumps to do our injections and stuff like that, we got the little sawed off one. So it's much smaller and reasonable for him. All of his tools are tied off. Like, the forethought that we put into the project, I think, is what made it so successful, right off the hop, right?
And as you work through that, you're likely going to just develop a standardized toolkit with the
Absolutely.
right lanyards and the right
Yeah.
tools for each of your crews, so that they're likely different and equipment dedicated to when you're working off ropes, right?
Yeah, and that's kind of the thing, with composites. So in the composite world, there's a couple of means of wetting out, your fabric and everything else. When it comes to doing ropes, you need to go with what's called the bag wet out method. So, the epoxy may be in a little bag on the ground where we can kind of hoist it up to ourselves, and it's already kind of pre-wetted out, and you can do the application that way. So,
Right.
That's kind of why we really put a lot of thought into what limitations we want to start with when it comes to size of piping, temperatures, pressures, that kind of stuff. Like, it was a big collaboration through our safety group, our quality group, all the guys that went through the training, and our operations team, kind of over 2-3 months, and really thought it all out. Well, what about this? What about this? And then we were able to come up with a plan where the 9 we've done, we've come up against zero issues.
Are we using at this point, have we, or do we have a plan to use any air tools in these situations?
So right now we try to eliminate that. So we went with cordless drills and everything else. But at this point, there's going to be things, for instance, clamshells. Those are going to need air. But you can, correct me if I'm wrong, you can run airlines if you need to for any of the equipment, can you not?
100%. Yeah, like part of the meeting that we had with Acker and on site as well was just going over limitations that we have, and like what they told us was we can pretty much rig anything up to you and rig anything down from you. There's no limitations whatsoever. So we got this bonnet injection actually coming up. So it's the first time we're going to kind of get outside of the valve packings, and we've already I've seen the location. I've already actually been to that location up on ropes because they misdiagnosed it. They thought it was a valve packing. Nobody really got up there. I climbed up there and I was like, that's not a valve packing leak. It was causing a huge ice mess, right?
Sure.
So while I was up there, I kind of had that conversation with the Accurant technicians that were out there, and I was like, I'm going to need air set up, and there was no problem whatsoever in terms of limitations on their end.
Right. Now, it's going to be interesting to come up with novel tool approaches depending on what the application is, whether that's some of our new battery operated torque guns, or potentially electric powered field machining equipment or air powered field machining equipment. And where my head was going was, sort of some of the bridge between what we're doing and what some of our partners are doing has to do with surface prep, right? And obviously with composite repair, we need to do surface prep. A lot of inspection rope access people have to do a lot of surface prep to be able to do thickness. And of course, we've got our sparkless grinding sparkless system, but they all operate off of air. Mm-hmm. And so I was curious about how the rigging in of energy sources that you might need to work on would work, because obviously you're not holding an air hose underneath your arm when you're trying to work. That has to be rigged into place so you can have access to it, or water or electricity or whatever, those kinds of things. But those things in the job plan get baked into the job so they can be rigged into place as needed.
Yeah, you'd be surprised some of the stuff these guys can rig into place. Like, we're talking fairly big fittings here. So that's why we didn't want to put, an absolute showstopper on certain sizes of EPs. I think, maybe one day down the road, we can go that route where they have the EPs kind of hoisted in place and we're bolting them together and doing the install. That would come with, piles of testing and some sign-offs and some procedural changes on our end. In the leak repair industry, it's always good to have some sort of way to, let's call it dual access to scaffolding. Like you want to have a way to get out of there. You never want to be in between the leak and somewhere else, which is kind of cool with rope access, because I think that you guys can kind of drop out of the way whenever you need to if the leak gets too bad, which, I mean, we haven't come across, but sometimes those are things like realities when you're doing leak repairs. Right?
Yeah, you've got to have contingency for line of fire for sure, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So for the enclosures and like where they're going to hoist stuff and where our procedure goes in the future, that'll be ever evolving. To be honest, I think that we'll kind of grow some legs on this thing as the years go on. But right now what we're trying to do is we're trying to keep it to battery operated stuff, airline stuff, with waters, steams, 650 psi and under at this point. And then if it's outside of those, I will take a firm stand as an operations leader and request a scaffold at this point.
Okay, so we've got our limits while we continue to learn and evolve what the capabilities are and what the limitations are of what we're doing.
Yes,
it's fantastic. I'm super excited. I'm so proud of what you guys have done. Mike, for a listener who hears us talking, how do they find out more and get in touch with you to talk about their rope access leak repair, their rope access specialty services applications? What should they do next?
Yeah, so I mean, they can reach out to us through our website. We've got LinkedIn. They can get a hold of me anytime directly. I answer my phone even in the dentist chair at 780-238-8304. Yeah, email. You guys can get a hold of us however you'd like, and we do pride ourselves on response time. So anytime you reach out, we definitely will be getting back to you same day. Maybe not with a solution same day, but you'll hear from us and we'll give you a timeline same day. That's a guarantee.
Well, we'll make sure that our team puts some contact information in all the places that this video and audio shows up. Our core purpose as a business is to use innovation to create value. And the kind of value that we're looking to create is improve safety, improve productivity, improve cost effectiveness. Just like my t-shirt says, this is why we exist. And it's not always about some new gadget. It's about innovation in delivery too. Innovation in technology, innovation in delivery. Innovation in delivery is combining two or three things in a completely different way and creating something completely new. And this, my friends, is exactly what you guys did here. Rope access specialty services and rope access leak repair is a fantastic use of innovation and delivery. I'm really, really excited and proud about what you guys have done.
Yeah, I guess I'd like to note as well, like this whole service line exists because of one of our core values, which is, collaboration. Like one of our three uniques is literally, collaboration with our client. This was at a client request that, hey, it would sure be nice if you guys did rope access leak repair. Well, you know what? Okay. We care about what you guys want, and we actually want to adapt to what you guys need to continue your operation, your plan. And if it's rope access, then that's what we'll do. I really like the fact that we will adapt to our client needs, and I'm really looking forward to what else we come up with in coming years.
Yeah, super exciting and so true. Giving our customers a collaborative experience is one, is a really important part of our intentional culture. So great, guys, fantastic. Thank you for coming on the show. And I'm really excited about where you guys are going to take this. And for everyone listening, thank you. Reach out to us. Reach out to Mike and his team. Rope access leak repair, rope access composite repair, rope access bolting, rope access field machining, and as Mike says, as he takes the training wheels off, rope access everything.
Thanks for having us, Don.
Thanks, Don.
Thanks, guys.